So, very good evening and welcome to all the viewers and the user doctors, also the medical practitioners, on behalf of Janak Kalyan Blood Bank Center. I also warmly welcome Dr. Atul Kulkarni, and I am very thankful to him to spare his valuable time for us. Friend, it's extreme pleasure to announce that Janak Kalyan Blood Bank inaugurate a well-equipped component separation unit on the auspicious occasion of Akshaya Tritiya. Lastly, the dream comes in a reality. It is because of a long awaiting process and also with the wholehearted support from all user doctors, not from talukas, but from periphery also, and the well-wishers of Janak Kalyan Blood Bank centers. The component separation unit will inaugurate after 2 days. After this process and after this process of component separation unit, the 4 components includes packed cell volume, plasma, platelets, and cryoprecipitate will serve our purpose for the benefit of the patients and the emergency service. The increasing demand of component separation Janak Kalyan Blood Bank Center initiated the process of activating the CME to updates the user doctors regarding the blood transfusion medicines. Today's webinar dedicated to practice and complication of blood and blood products. The topic is very useful, very important for our day-to-day practice for the user doctors. We are running short of times. So the today's speaker, Dr. Atul Kulkarni, was a very eminent speaker. He is an activist in blood donation movement. I will request the senior surgeon, Dr. Sunil Nandavkar. Please introduce today's speaker, Dr. Atul Kulkarni. Dr. Sunil.
Thank you, Rahul. Good evening, friends. Just now, Rahul has declared that soon we are going to start our component separation unit. The dream is going to come within 2 days. So accordingly, we arranged lecture series to introduce all our blood users about the components. I mean, what are the components and how to use it? What are their complications? How to prevent the complications? So first lecture was delivered by Dr. Samir Minekari, and we are starting with the second lecture today. So we have the eminent speaker, Dr. Atul Kulkarni. He will talk about the complications, preventions, and safe practice of component use. It is a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Atul Kulkarni, who is a pathologist, as well as he has done a diploma in transfusion medicine. He is in charge of Janak Kalyan Raktapedi Pune. He is the director of Janak Kalyan chain of blood bank all over India. He is internal auditor for NABH accreditation for blood bank as well as hospitals. And he holds a lot of posts in government and semi-government and private organizations. It's a long list. I will not spare much time on introducing him all other activities. I request Dr. Atul Kulkarni to start his valuable lecture for all our blood users. Sir, please.
Sir, I think sir, Dr. Atul sir is not, I think, audible. Sir, please mute the mic.
Am I audible now?
Yes, 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 sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks a
Yes,
lot
sir.
for kind introduction, and I am very happy that again I am with the team Jan Kalyan Mahad, and I am a part of Jan Kalyan team. I am a witness. I am witnessing the all the progress of Jan Kalyan Mahad. Now the dream of component separation, establishment of component separation laboratory, and everything. So it's a great pleasure for me to be a part of the CME and also the process.
That was sufficient to at least survive this time. But it was started.
And
Sir, please
secondly,
continue.
I was interacting with Dr. Rahul, who suggested me that there will be the audience will be so I will like to share about those aspects which are very relevant, though basic, but very useful to refresh ourselves. And hence, I will try to be simple as possible. And at the end, we can discuss about this in question answer session also. So with this brief intro, let us go ahead with the presentation part. Hopefully, I am able to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, 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 sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So thanks a lot. As we know that our goal is to achieve safe transfusion, and it's a joint venture. All should come together: clinician, blood center, and also we should not forget the blood donor. So it's a joint venture of all these three pillars. They should come together, and then and then we could achieve this our aim of safe transfusion. uh, I have gone through the previous CME also, the lecture delivered by Dr. Samir Melankiri, eminent hematologist, and he has tried to cover all the fundamental things, and he has elaborated many things. So it will be simpler for me to emphasize some of the aspects. So whenever there is a need for transfusion, so one must be very careful what benefit we are targeting and what risks are there for the patient when we are going to have a blood transfusion. So what we say that the decision of transfusion is very crucial, and it should be taken very judiciously, because as we know that the blood transfusion is a potentially hazardous. There are a lot many transfusion reactions that we will discuss some of them in short. Also, there I I don't know the scenario in the peripheral part, but sometimes there is a pressure. रुग्णाचे नातेवाईक असं म्हणतात की जरा अशक्तपणा आहे, जरा एक दोन युनिट ब्लड चढवून द्या म्हणजे बरं वाटेल. सो देर इज अ सोशल प्रेशर. So all things together, we have to take the decision. So it's a crucial decision, and if we want to enlist the reactions that can happen, so I have tried to make it a small table, but mind will those reactions are not that small. So the list is huge. It may be a immune mediated, non-immune mediated, it may be a acute, or it may be a delayed. So there are different types of reactions, and hence we are bothered, and we should be very cautious when we take a call of planning a transfusion. Secondly, for blood bank also, nowadays it's not that easy. Just previously we were knowing that there are ABO groups, RH group, and only that matching Most of the time in peripheral part, it's a saline matching and all these things. So, but nowadays we know that there are lot many blood grouping systems. There are many antigens, and as if there is an antigen, there is a chance to form an antibody, and then that can make our life miserable. So, so there are different blood grouping systems. So on this background, we have to discuss some of the important practical aspects whenever from the clinical side. So if we want to define who is responsible for transfusion and all these things, so obviously the doctor in charge who is managing the patient is responsible. But mind well, not just a doctor in charge is responsible. We have come across various cases, medical legal cases, and where the entire team that was involved in the execution of this transfusion process was held responsible, maybe of different degree of involvement and different degree of penalties and all so on. So in all, just I want to press that everybody that is involved in the process will be held responsible, may it be a clinical side or may it be a blood bank side, depending upon their nature of involvement. So hence, some of the basic things we in our routine hectic schedule, we try to miss some of these things, and sometimes we may not emphasize this small but important thing to our housemans, nursing staff. So it is our responsibility actually to press on these basic things on our hospital staff, so that our goal of safe transfusion can be achieved. And as you are aware, all these basic things will consist of patient identification, request form, sample identification, product identification, storage of blood, when, where. So all these things in clinical areas. I think this must be a challenge in peripheral area where if blood is coming from a blood bank which is far from your local place, then there is a storage of blood is also a concern, and administration. So all these different parts are very crucial. So I want to focus on one aspect of which is very relevant from clinicians point perspective. uh, there are 2-3 cases from Pune also and outside Pune also. uh, I am talking about medico legal cases when they have uh, uh, the clinician was made as a party just because of he has not taken a consent, he has not explained the say adverse reactions or what can be go wrong to the patient and all these things. So he could not able to give the evidence, and he was held liable for the blood transfusion reactions and all these things. So apart from this medical legal aspects, nowadays if we consider this era of accreditation and all these things, we are sensitive. So it's a patient right to know all these things. So informed consent is very crucial. So we should be taking the informed consent before transfusion for each patient. And obviously the as you are familiar, it won't be a say blanket consent. It won't cover this consent for blood transfusion. So you should take a informed consent. So physician who was ordering the transfusion should be involved, and either his team member should inform the possibilities, benefit, risk and alternatives for transfusion to the patient. It should be clearly documented with reason why you are transfusing. So there are many cases the clinician was told to justify that why it was needed. So whenever say these all these things crop up when there is a problem. Usually when there is no problem, all the transfusion is uneventful, then these things will not crop up. But we should be alert, and we should take informed consent for each and every patient. So there should be a routine consent for routine transfusion. And also we come across sometimes some special conditions like say there is a emergency, so emergency cross matching, or we are unable to get a compatible blood, we have to transfuse the best compatible blood and all these things. So special consents, if there is a alternate say I hope in the previous lecture CME there was a discussion about transfusion of positive Rh positive blood to the Rh negative patient. So such scenarios, incompatible cross match. So in all those scenarios, we should take a special informed consent from the patient. So that's two type of consent that we must consider. So then request form, I think we are all familiar, and usually the medical officer just signs, some nursing staff or any team member will fill. And since it's a very lengthy a long full scape form, we try to avoid filling those requisition form. But mind well, it's again a legal document, and it will be useful for blood center to choose appropriate unit. Say if we are aware, if diagnosis is written as thalassemia, or say what was the condition, if so that will blood bank is aware that there can be a incompatibilities will come. Proper unit with expiry date will be selected if the pediatric demands are there, cardiac demands are there. If there are in obstetric cases also, we found that routinely that incompatibility come because of a typical antibody. So if multipara or prime, it makes a difference while selecting the unit and checking the compatibility. So it's a very important thing to fill the requisition form. We are all aware that sample collection and labeling is very crucial. I have just shown a chart of blood transfusion reactions. Mind well, the most common cause of blood transfusion reaction is say clerical errors, and those clerical error will lead into hemolytic transfusion reactions and can be a lethal to the patient. Everything start from simple mistake, and that can be a clerical mistake, wrong name. There can be a spike of the samples and all these things. So we have to emphasize on our team members in the hospital about patient identification, appropriate collection of blood sample, sending plain and EDTA tubes for the grouping and cross matching. It's important to know that we will require, blood bank center will require a fresh sample if the patient has undergone a transfusion previously, because there is a chance that antibodies can be developed for this first unit, and that can cause a problem while transfusion of the second. So whenever there is a successive second unit is required after say 48 to 72 hours, you should send a fresh sample. Also, sometimes if the hospital is located apart in a distant place, then there is a challenge of hemolysis also. You can clearly see this can hamper the cross matching, also the grouping accurate typing. So sample collection is very crucial as far as appropriate procedure is considered. So ideal requisition form with a well-labeled sample is the key initial phase. So this is a form at my center. Just to highlight the journey of blood sample that happens in blood center, because many a times we are busy in managing the patients, and this is a era of instant insta. So everything we want quick, just the quick delivery. So the thing which comes quickly is good, but mind well in blood banking or in transfusion, though we know that TAT turnaround time is very crucial, but if you want to only stick to the turnaround time, it can be dangerous. Then those persons who are giving you the service quickest, might well they are taking shortcuts. Why? Because you can just see this number of events that happens at a blood center. When sample is sent from the hospital, received at blood bank, some checking is there, data entry documentation is there, blood grouping is there, antibody screening is there, selection of appropriate unit, actual cross-matching procedure, then documentation, compatibility reports preparation, checking, and issuing. So everything is done. If it is, if there is a shortcut in incubation, if there is a shortcut in steps, then you can cut down the time, but it will be dangerous for the patient. So, in just to emphasize, in cross matching, there are two methods. One is a card method, where you can cut short the incubation time to save the TAT, and a routine tube method, which is a best method, but the incubation period is 45 minutes to 1 hour. So in card method, you can cut short to 15 to 20 minutes, so that we can give cross match unit to the patient as early as possible. So these are the typical things that happens at the blood center. So why this cross matching is important? Yes, at the time of selection, we do select the same group, but as I have already mentioned, that there are different blood grouping systems apart from ABO and RH, and the antibodies related to these antigens can give rise to some of the reactions, like hemolytic reaction, or a delayed acute or delayed hemolytic reaction. So we are bothered, and hence this cross matching is very crucial. So this cross matching phase includes the Coombs cross matching, which is able to detect the incomplete antibodies developed against the antigen. So it's very important that Coombs cross matching needs to be done, and I am sure that Jan Kalyan Mahad, they are doing the cross matching both by Coombs method, so that the cross matching is very accurate, and we could able to pick up the minor incompatibilities to offer the safest transfusion. So these in emergency, we could cut short the cross matching by doing the spin technique. In this spin technique, the incubation part is cut short, and because of that, this IgG antibody, we may not be able to detect with the spin cross match. Only IgM antibodies, which are complete antibodies and which are the cause for the major incompatibility or hemolysis, are ruled out. So in case of emergency, this protocol is followed at blood center. Why I have pressed is that I have observed in some of the hospitals, the housemans continuously give call to the blood bank that the blood is required urgently, and you give the blood immediately. So sometimes there are two reasons. One is a real emergency, and second is man-made emergency. Why I have coined the term man-made emergency? Because sometimes the sample is sent late by the houseman or house doctor or a nursing staff, and now all the team is ready, anesthesiologist is there, surgeon is there, and they want to start the operation. And in this condition, to save the face, the house doctor will continuously ring the blood bank and will emphasize that he should do the cross match urgently. So this can be a man-made emergency, but mind well, this spin cross match, we generally recommend if there is a dire emergency, say for example heavy bleeding is there, PPH, for example PPH is there, trauma case, where you are anticipating massive blood loss. In those scenarios, we can opt for a immediate spin protocol. But otherwise, when you can wait for 45 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, you should not ask for immediate spin technique. So whenever the clinician says that there is an emergency, the blood bank will go ahead with this immediate spin technique, and we can miss the IgG type of antibodies. And in those scenarios also, there is a protocol, say for this is a Coombs protocol, where there is a washing incubation step is there. But in emergency also, we have to take care and go ahead with routine cross-match protocol, so that till the time the blood is reached and transfusion has started, if some mismatch is there, we can still intimate our clinical team, so that either they can modify the decision, stop transfusion, and can issue another unit. So here I have mentioned some of the incomplete antibodies which can lead to some of the reactions. So it's very important to transfuse all the red cells with proper compatibility testing, which include the cross match. So this I have the red cells. The scenario is different for platelets and plasma. Say for example, plasma, there are no antibody, there are no red cells in the plasma, so we are not worried about red cells of the donor. And routinely in blood bank, antibody screening of donor takes place. Hence, there is no need for cross matching the plasma and also the platelets. For plasma, you have to select the same plasma and can be issued without cross match. For platelets, so for plasma, I have said that same group plasma need to be issued. And for platelets, as you know, though on platelets surface there are ABO and RH, means blood group antigens are there, but this system is not that much important on platelet. They have other antigens like HLA, platelet specific antigens, and rather concern is for those antigens. So for platelets also, cross matching is not required. We generally recommend issuing a same group platelet But if same group platelet is not available, you can very well transfuse any group platelet, because this ABO antigens that are present on platelet are not that much important. The most important system, antigen system on the platelet, is the HLA system. So for platelet, any group platelet can be issued, because maintaining the same group inventory at a blood center is very difficult. And if you consider peripheral part like Mahad, it will be a Herculean task. The centers like Pune also, when we are preparing around daily 20 to 30 RDs, platelets, we are still not able to cater all the group specific platelets. So for platelet, you can safely transfuse any group platelets. Group specificity, if it is available, that will be great. But if it's not available, don't worry. There is no problem about this. You can safely transfuse it. Say, as I have just told, if there is a clinical urgency, what you can do, you can do a immediate activate a immediate protocol where a group of O negative dire emergency is there. O negative Paxils can be issued without cross match, without immediate spin cross match. If you have some time, then ABO and RHD type the patient sample and select the appropriate unit, and with immediate spin method you can issue, or you can have a if it should be on priority but without debating protocol, then you can complete the cross match and issue it. Just I am not aware about the scenario in Mahad, but there are different scenarios about neonatal transfusion and exchange transfusion. So whenever we come across neonatal transfusions, we are aware that the antigen on the red cells are say maturing, and antibodies are not present in neonates, and there is a chance that mother's antibodies will be there in baby's plasma, and hence the protocol is we have to cross match the donor's unit with mother and baby. So that is the reason why in neonatal transfusion, the blood center asks for mothers and baby sample for cross matching. So actually the Coombs cross match with mother's sample is the key. So that is most important part for selecting appropriate unit for neonatal transfusion. So if mother's blood group is unknown, then we have to go ahead with O negative, considering the worst scenario, and then we have to cross match. Obviously, as you know, that for exchange and all these things, we have to select neonatal and exchange. The red cells should be collected within 5 days, max 7 days collection should be there. And as you know, for irradiation is recommended for neonatal transfusion. So that was emphasized. For selection of unit, definitely in mother and baby, so the group that is compatible with mother and baby needs to be selected, and usually the group selected commonly will be O. And if any mother or baby is Rh negative, then you have to select a Rh negative. If both are Rh positive, then you have to select a Rh positive. So this is one of the table where you can see. So basic principle for exchange transfusion, one must remember that we have to issue a unit, cross match a unit which is compatible with mother and baby. So this is a elaborative table where what if baby's group is so and so, mother's group is so and so, then what is the first choice and second choice. So I have come across some scenarios where the pediatrician or neonatologist say, "Arey, forget. It's a simple thing to cross match O. If baby and mother is one of them is negative, give O negative. If both are positive, give O positive." Why to remember all these things, combinations and all these things? That's also true. It's easy to remember. It's always safe to cross match O red cells for the neonatal transfusion. So you can adapt that protocol also. It's absolutely fine to give. And in neonate, second important thing is that in old days, now you can say from 14th, new era will start at Jan Kalyan Mahad, when they will be issuing the red cells and plasma instead of whole blood. So in neonates, then how to go ahead? Previously, when this component were not there, when we transfuse O positive or O negative whole blood in neonates, then we are worried about the antibodies in donors plasma in whole blood, anti-A and anti-B. There are some high titer O groups where anti-A and anti-B titer is high, and that can cause some problem to the baby at the time of exchange transfusion or neonatal transfusion. So best practice that we advocate is select a O red cell and select a AB plasma. So AB plasma will be universal plasma for practically saying, and O will be universal red cell. So O red cell can be safely given to other groups. So on the same line, AB plasma can be given to other groups without any issue. So routinely when in Pune at my center, we usually give O red cells and AB plasma. Now the new term is for this is reconstituted whole blood, means O red cells and AB plasma mixed together or joined together or should transfuse the whole blood with utmost safety. So that can be thought if there is any neonatal or any pediatrician and doing the neonatal transfusion, we can remember all these things. So sometime we come across this patients of autoimmune hemolytic anemias, especially the common thing will be mycoplasma pneumoniae and all these things. Usually at we have found out that whenever the blood comes for matching from a hospital, the patient is anemic and there is a mismatch, and atypical antibodies are present. They are cold reacting antibodies, and then we will discuss with the clinician that have you any chest infection or like that. He says, no, I don't think so. Have you done an X-ray? Then he will go ahead with the X-ray and find out some patches. So the cause was a mycoplasma that was there in the lungs, and antibodies were produced against that mycoplasma, and they have cross-reacted with the red cells and caused the autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So these autoimmune hemolytic anemia are very challenging, and it's challenging to get a compatible unit. So we have to first differentiate whether it is a cold antibodies or warm antibodies. That can be done at any blood center level. They could able to find out cold or warm. If the antibodies are cold, then the clinician should be very happy, because the antibodies will cause trouble if the temperature is less. And fortunately, our body temperature is 37. So we usually observe that in cold AIHA, the blood transfusion is very safe, uneventful. Sometimes it can cause a delayed type of hemolysis that we should be careful about it, but usually the transfusion is uneventful, and hence we nowadays we call a terminology called as best compatible blood. So we have to cross match few units, a battery of units, 3 units, 6 units, and the best unit is selected and that is issued. But for cold AIHA, it's a task for us as the antibodies are reacting at the cold temperature. But for warm AIHA, it's a very tricky scenario because the antibodies are reacting at 37 degrees Celsius and body temperature is also 37. So we are bothered about this, and that at that time also judiciously best compatible unit needs to be selected. I must emphasize about alternate groups because sometimes it may happen that you will not be able to get because of challenges, say AB positive unit may not be available at a time, or B is short. So in those cases, please remember it's a safe practice to use alternate blood group and after compatibility testing. So for A group patient, A is the first option, but O can be a second option. For B group patient, B is the first option, but O can be a second option. So likewise, for all positive, you can issue negative units also, but for negative, you have to issue a negative unit. In last CME, I think Dr. Samir sir has very has thoroughly explained about how the antibodies against Rh gets generated, and you can safely transfuse O positive to tackle that crisis. But later on, in next whenever they will require a transfusion again, then you have to select the negative units. So just to recapitulate, RBC should be given group specific and after transfusion. FFP should be given group specific. There is no need to cross match. SDP, single donor platelet, and RDP can be given any group. Same thing applies with cryoprecipitate also. It can be given any group without any problem. So again, this is a chart of say which alternative groups you can say pick up if the same group is not available. As I have pressed, AB plasma will be like a universal, and O cells will be universal. Against Rh system, negative will be universal. So let us go further and discuss something about storage temperature and transportation temperature. So this is again a challenge. Many times we come across queries related to the storage of red cells. The unit was issued and it was kept in a freezer or a chiller. Mind well, the refrigerators that we use in a hospital or clinical site, they are not temperature controlled. So usually, as you know, the red cells are very tricky. They are fragile, temperature sensitive. If the temperature goes down to 0 or near about 0, then they will hemolyze. And if the temperature goes up, then there is a chances of bacterial multiplication. If bacteria are there, then they will multiply exponentially. Hence, temperature is maintenance of the temperature is very crucial. As we know that in hospitals, the refrigerators that we use, we commonly observe that in chiller, ice formation is there. So the compartment that is nearer to the freezer, the temperature goes to minus, and below or in the doors, we have observed that the temperature rises to 12, 14, 16. So there is no uniform temperature. So we we don't recommend to store red cells in a domestic refrigerator. So when once the red cell is issued from a blood bank refrigerator, it should be transfused. So this point one must remember. Sometimes for platelet, we have observed that the nursing staff or housemaids are fond of keeping any blood component they receive before transfusion into the refrigerator. So they keep platelets also into the refrigerator. Mind well, the storage temperature of the platelet is 22 degrees Celsius. So if you refrigerate the platelets, then they will be useless. Their functioning capability will get lost. So please note this point. And for fresh frozen plasma, yes, we say that thawed plasma, which is issued from the blood center, can be kept at 4 degrees Celsius in a refrigerator for maximum 24 hours. So say for plasma, yeah, we can store in the refrigerator for some time, but usually it is not required. So for plasma, these things should be noted. For cryo, as you know, cryoprecipitate is a very heat sensitive, so it should not be stored for a longer duration. After thawing, it should be transfused immediately. So this point you should please make note of it. So we should emphasize these minor points to the our team, so that the transfusion should be say dealt with carefully. We must. I'm going to a bit fast so that we can spare some time for interaction also. So visual inspection of back at the when it receives is also very crucial, because it is a sometimes if there is a hemolysis during transportation or some problem is there, that can be easily picked up during the observation of the unit. So visual inspection, checking patient's identity. So all these things are very crucial at clinician end, so because so as to avoid the transfusion reaction. So in the hospital also, they should monitor the each and every transfusion. They can prepare their own charts for monitoring. So that will be very, very essential. So one point that I want to press here again is that do not warm the unit, do not add any medication to the bag, and we have to use a blood transfusion set. So please remember these 3 points that are very, very important. So in your nursing staff training, you can press on these points about them. This BT set is an important blood transfusion set which has a filter of 170 micron, which will avoid or which will prevent this cellular debris or fibrin clots going into the circulation. So this BT set is very, very important. So I have pressed, I think, these few points. About infusions, in some say critical patient, numerous IV infusions are going on simultaneously. So please note that do not prime the set with 5% dextrose or ringer lactate, as dextrose can cause hemolysis of the red cells, and ringer lactate can chelate the calcium and can cause clot formation. So these infusions line should be different for these fluids. So before administration of blood, completely flush all the incompatible IV fluids and drugs. So preferably you can change the set. So warming, actually there is a mindset that blood should be warm at the time of ट्रान्सफ्युजन अँड सम म्हणजे काही वेळेला तर अगदी असं बघितलंय की ब्लँकेट मध्ये रगामध्ये गुंडाळून ठेवलेलं असतं किंवा उशीच्या खाली ठेवलेलं असतं बिकॉज ऑफ द मिथ दॅट that will be useful. But again, I want to press that absolutely it is not needed. This keeping into the blanket or keeping on table also for some time. As we know that the blood is given very slowly, drop by drop. So as you know that there is 4 to 5 liter of blood in our body, and if a drop of blood at the temperature of 4 degrees Celsius, say we assume that blood pouch has come from the refrigerator, its temperature is 4 degrees Celsius. So if you put a drop of 4 degrees Celsius blood into 5 liter of blood volume, which is at 37 degrees Celsius, I don't, you know that we have a best thermostat which keeps our body temperature at 37 degrees Celsius. So there will not be any problem with that also. So with this mindset need to be changed. If the flow rate is very small, we are giving it slowly, then there is no problem. Warming is only indicated when there is a massive transfusion or extensive transfusion, or cool agglutinins are there, and usually for that warming devices are there that are used. But practically in routine practice hospitals, blood warming is not required. So please make this point. uh, Also, we don't recommend antipyretic, anti-allergic, antihistaminics before transfusion, because that can mask the transfusion reactions, and we will not be able to pick up the reactions at the earliest early. So that point we should remember. As we are aware that first phase we will begin with a slow drip, and slowly we will increase the timing. We have to monitor the transfusion. So we have to monitor the TPR BP chart. We have pressed on this. So we quickly focus on some of the adverse reaction. As you know that because of as the blood, I usually emphasize one point in my each and every lecture, that Mindville blood is a tissue. It's a liquid connective tissue in our body. So we are collecting a tissue from a donor and infusing the tissue into the patient's body. So though we call this as a transfusion, but Mindwell, it is similar to transplant. So it's similar to transplant, and hence we should be very cautious about the untoward events. It may be a mild or a life-threatening. Usually, with all these precautions, the transfusions are eventful, but there is a risk. So majority, though there are majority of transfusions are uneventful, around say 10% we may experience some minor untoward effects. So as in my initial slide, I have pressed that it can be an immune reaction or a non-immune reactions. It can be an immediate, that is the symptoms come within 24 hours, few hours, or delayed where the symptoms and signs and symptoms come in weeks, days and weeks. So usually the immune transfusion reactions are due to the patient's antibodies against donor antigens. Means patient has antibodies against the antigens that are present on the donor's red cells, or donor's WBCs, or donor's platelets. So all these are the culprit for the reactions. And obviously most common is a reaction to the plasma proteins also. The allergic reactions most common are because of this plasma proteins. So in this immune reactions, usually acute or delayed hemolytic reaction, the commonest non-hemolytic febrile transfusion reaction, allergic reactions, alloimmunization, TRALI, transfusion-related acute lung injury, GVHD, graft versus host disease, post-transfusion purpura, immunodilution. So all these are immune-mediated reactions. They may present simply with chills, fever, backache, headache, itching, palpitation. So there are different type of clinical presentation in different type of reaction. So this will give you clue, and then you can go ahead with the workup. So hence, but if sometimes the patient is in coma or under GA, it's a very alarming signs. These signs may not be there. Then you have to judge by hypotension, uncontrollable bleeding, hemoglobinuria. These can indicate that something is going wrong and we should be cautious in it. In delayed days or weeks may be required. Usually they are because of secondary immune response, and maybe usually for minor blood group antibodies or Rh antibodies are involved, and usually the hemolysis will be extravascular hemolysis in those cases. In non-hemolytic febrile transfusion reaction, which is the commonest, what we say after transfusion, we observe that there is a only fever is there. Apart from that, nothing is there. So usually that is because of antibodies, antigens on donor platelet or WBCs that are the culprit, and that can be avoided, this febrile reaction, with the help of one log leukodepletion by using a Buffy-Coat method of the transfusion. This is seen commonly in multi-transfused patients like thalassemics. These febrile reactions are common. So I don't go into the management part. Allergic reactions, yeah, those are mainly for plasma proteins. So severity is variable. Usually it is mild like urticaria, but it can go up to anaphylactic reactions, and due to it may be due to IgA deficiency. So, and this reaction may occur in a minutes. So common in patients of repeated plasma component therapy, these reactions can be there. Won't go in clinical picture. Apart from that, circulatory overload. One example that was pressed in previous CME about say heart failure patients. If you give whole blood, then plasma overload can be there. But with components red cells, yes, we can prevent this circulatory overload, pulmonary edema. So judiciously, this red cell transfusion will be helpful. So apart from, there will be iron deposit that is seen commonly with multi-transfused patient. There is a risk of TTI, but as you know, proper donor selection and proper transfusion testing protocol, we have able to minimize these types of reactions. So in a nutshell, to remember, avoidance of clerical error is the main thing that we must press. Proper patient identification, correctly labeled sample is very, very crucial. Proper identification of patient and blood pack unit is very important. Careful and close observation of patient while transfusion. So the patient needs to be monitored. Most of the means in I have seen in major big hospitals, they don't give transfusion during night time. Usually the transfusion are done in daytime under continuous monitor. If there is a only in critical means emergency, they transfuse at night. So similarly, the due importance is given for the transfusion and avoid unnecessary transfusion. We say that transfusion should not be given if it is indicated, but we want to press that transfusion need to be given when it is absolutely indicated. Whenever there is nothing, you can't say avoid it, then it should be given. So from blood bank point, as you know, that after a transfusion reaction, we have to give sample to the blood bank post transfusion plain and EDTA sample along with the infusion set and first voided urine for investigation of transfusion reactions. I won't press on the this part of how to manage the transfusion reaction. You are a better person than me to take a call, but keep the blood bank in loop. Blood bank will quickly check whether there is a hemolyte incompatibility is there or not. If there is a major incompatibility, that means there is a likelihood that hemolytic reaction can be there, and then jointly we have to tackle ahead. Or if it is a compatible, then we are assured that the reaction is mild one, and it will be easier for us. So this is in a nutshell that reaction with all said and done, we can try to minimize the transfusion reaction, but we are unable to prevent transfusion reactions. So this was all about the practical aspects of transfusion and some points about transfusion reactions. This point of use of components and all these things was well taken in previous CME. So I will not touch upon the component separation and all these things. So, but just to recapitulate the temperature, storage conditions and expiry, whole blood is stored at 2 to 6 degrees Celsius, Paxil 2 to 6 degrees Celsius, fresh frozen plasma below -30, platelets 20 degrees, 22 degrees Celsius, and cryo also below -35 degrees Celsius. So this is a chart showing the storage temperature, expiry, in which case it should be used. You can also prepare similar chart and paste it in a blood nursing counter so that it can be readily available. You could able to judge the dose, what the increment likely after Paxil transfusion, fresh frozen plasma, platelets, what do's and what don'ts are there at the time of blood center. So such charts will be useful for the nursing staff and house doctor while going ahead with the transfusion. So this was in short about my presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dr. Atul sir, for such a nice and informative lecture. So we are running short of time again, but the interaction is one of the part for this webinar. So I request Dr. Sunil just to conduct a session of question and answer and interaction. Dr. Sunil.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Dr. Atul Kulkarni, for nice and elaborative lecture of safe practice of blood transfusion. You have covered most of the topics, including pre-transfusion counseling and consent, which nobody does, I suppose. But that is very important as a medical legal aspect. So everyone should counsel the patient and take a proper valid consent before transferring the blood. Of course, you have covered all other factors about the cross-matching and safe blood transfusion practice and complications, everything. Now the session is open for all audience, question and answer. Those who have questions, please raise your hand and Dr. Atul is ready. Unmute yourself and start your questions.
I think number of doctors are there who are watching this webinar from Mahad also and from outside Mahad also. So it's requesting for this interactive session.
Sir, I would like to know about the minor incompatibilities, how important they are while transferring the blood. Minor incompatibility.
Usually minor incompatibilities will get detected if we start with the careful antibody screening and this Coombs cross match. Usually they are there to pick up the IgG type of antibodies, which are incomplete antibodies, and they are the reason for delayed reactions. So say acute reactions will be prevented with the help of our routine saline cross match, and they will pick up the IgM antibodies which are complete, which can cause hemolysis, direct hemolysis. But these IgG antibodies which are incomplete, they will sensitize the red cells, and those red cells will be picked up by the spleen and all these things early, and they will be there will be a extravascular hemolysis, and later there will be a jaundice. The blood hemoglobin count will get lowered and all these things. So this incomplete cross match because of IgG antibodies will be responsible for delayed type of hemolytic transfusion reactions.
So delayed mean how many days after transfusion? Approximately.
Usually, say in a week time, after 2 days, 3 days, there can be a jaundice and all these things, symptoms will come. So it will be in week.
Thank you. Disturbance to that. Any more questions to audience? If there are no questions, I think everybody has understood topic very well.
Dr. Harshada Kulkarni is going to ask.
Hello.
Dr. Harshala. Yes, please, madam.
Hello, sir. Really very nice session. I would like if you would share some light on the RDP and the SDP. Means for platelet transfusions, what is more preferable, an SDP or an RDP, and what's the difference clinically as well as from blood bank point of view?
Yeah. RDP and SDP. RDP means random donor platelets. The platelets that are prepared or separated from whole blood donation are called as a random donor platelet. And SDP is a single donor platelet, or the platelets that are collected from a donor with the help of cell separator machine, commonly called as apheresis machine. So SDP are collected by platelet donation with the help of cell separator, and RDP are prepared from whole blood donation. So so there will be a limitation for RDP because as you know, we collect 350 ml or max 450 ml of blood from whole blood donation. So from this 350 or 450 ml, we will extract the platelets that are present in a whole blood. As against this SDP, the platelet donor is connected to the machine. The blood comes out into the machine slowly. Platelet will get collected, removed, and the remaining part will go into the donor circulation. So this process will continue till your targeted yield of the platelets is achieved. So with SDP, you can target the yield, how much platelets you want to collect. So that can be achieved with a single donor platelet. But in random donor platelet, we have a limitation. We don't know exact platelet count of the whole blood. So number of platelet that will be present in RDP may vary. So this is the basic difference between these two. But please note that in a routine scenario, this normal RDP are sufficient for transfusion. For the because say you can give a multiple doses of the RDP, say usually 6 to 8 RDPs can be given and can get a comparable result to the SDP. If you utilize the Buffy-Coat method of platelet preparation, then the yield 4 to 6 RDPs will be equivalent with the single dose platelet or SDP. SDP definitely has an advantage, 2-3 points. One is that usually the SDPs that are prepared are leukodepleted. So that is one advantage, so that with leukodepletion, the reactions because of platelet means because of transfusion, the likelihood will go down. Secondly, the platelets, this SDP will have a single type of platelet. So exposure to the number of antigen, platelet antigen, will get reduced with SDP transfusion. So in patients where regular platelet transfusion is indicated, at that time you can prefer SDPs. But if a person is requiring platelet once in a lifetime, then there is no need for SDP. You can go ahead with random donor platelets. So this is a main scenario. If you consider which is a better product, so currently SDP is a better product as compared to RDP. But nowadays work is going on in developed countries. They are pulling the platelet, random donor platelet. They are leukodepleting those random donor platelet and also using platelet additive solutions. And then in that scenario, the recent studies shows that pooled platelets are equivalent or similar to SDP, and they can be used alternatively also. But in currently in Indian scenario, where there is a limitation about pooling, leukodepletion, platelet additions, platelet additive solutions, in this scenario, SDP is better. But for routine transfusion, when the patient needs platelets in a lifetime, RDPs are sufficient. There is no need to waste RDPs for the want of SDP. But say, for example, bone marrow transplant patients are there. In those cases, especially hematological patients, SDP will be preferred.
Yes. Thanks a lot, sir. Just if I am permitted a last question, just a practical curiosity. So we find the JAK platelet regularly certain things which we are physiological changes platelets. Is there a criteria that platelet donors platelet should be used not? Because I think functionally platelet will be similar as though. Because blood collection, after blood collection, is there any estimation of the platelet count that done on for some which
I could not able to hear the first part. Are you talking about judging the platelet count after transfusion of SDP or RDP, right? I think she has lost the connection. Hello,
Dr. Harshala madam.
I think
Dr. Harshala madam.
you are talking about platelet survival in the body after transfusion.
No, sir. Means in certain patients, we find giant platelets which are physiologically that patient the same. So, are there areas for such donors that they shouldn't donate, or are those platelets can be useful because functionally they are the same as our normal platelets? specifically
You are
for that
talking
group of
about
donors.
persons with giant platelets if
Yes,
they come for donation.
yes, sir.
Usually there is no problem, but mind well that in during routine these things, the persons with giant platelet count, giant platelets, usually the machines will miss the platelet and may give a wrong result, and the total platelet count will can be on the lower side. Say usually for platelet donation, it's 1.5 lakh is the criteria. If their count is less than that, then he will not get selected for platelet donation. But if he is a whole blood donation, donated blood, as we don't check platelet during the time of whole blood donation, he donates, and we separate the platelets. Usually the platelet yield may be lower, but the giant platelet, if they are there, since they are physiologically okay, they will give the similar results, but the number will be maybe less. And for platelet donation, he may not be qualified, because we will not come to know that he has a giant platelet, because in blood center usually they will just go ahead with cell counter. They won't go with peripheral blood stem, blood smear, and they will not be able to diagnose the cause of say this thrombocytopenia or low platelets. So this is a current limitation.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. That was really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir,
Any
is there any specific ratio of giving massive transfusion? When giving massive transfusion, how many blood should be replaced with the FFP?
This is again one a topic by itself, massive transfusion protocol. It is called as a MTP, massive transfusion protocol. Numerous protocols are there. Usually what we observed currently is 1:1 is the protocol. Say for one red cell, one plasma is given. Usually in some of the hospitals they make say 4 red cells, 4 plasma units, and half SDP or 4 RDPs. Or alternatively, they will give 4 red cells, 4 plasma, 1 SDP. In next, they may skip 1 SDP, and in another lot again they will add 1 SDP. And depending, so this is how they have done. But usually the ratio is nowadays 1:1 for red cell and plasma in massive transfusion protocol.
So in 4 transfusion, we can give safely vaccines.
Yeah,
4 vaccines we can give safely.
they make a consignment, call it as a consignment. In first consignment, 4 plus 4, usually in big trauma centers, they will keep 4 O negative red cells, 4 AB plasma, which are thawed at room temperature. They are willing to waste those also, but in big trauma centers, they will keep this as a red. When the casualty person will or trauma unit will say, they will say, like in our hospital we say code blue, it is triggered. So similarly they will activate massive transfusion protocol, and once the massive transfusion protocol is activated, this consignment of this number of unit will be issued from the blood center. So this is how they are planning for massive transfusion. So so there are protocol who can activate massive transfusion protocol. So either the anesthesiologist or orthopedic surgeon or obstetrician on table for in case of PPH, they can take a call and activate this Marvin protocol.
Right. Thank you.
I think any question remain? Anybody? So I think we are concluding the session. Before that, any
Sister, 2 minutes, sister.
any question?
प्लाज्मा एक्सचेंज केसेस हँडल केले थेरॉपिटिकली प्लाझ्मा एक्सचेंज आपण लोकांनी स्वतः 4-5 केसेस हँडल केले आणि ते मशीन तिकडे नेऊन तुमच्या हॉस्पिटल ज्या हॉस्पिटलला पेशंट आहे सांगायचं विचार
So sir, I think we will conclude. Sunil?
Yes, we should conclude now.
Thank you.
Yes. So we are very thankful, sir, for such a nice lecture. Blood transfusion medicine is very stringent otherwise, but sir, you made it this topic very easy to understand. Thanks for your valuable time. I am appealing to all user doctors. Component separation unit that will be inaugurated shortly will turn viable only with your cooperation and your service. Still, this is our the first phase only. On the next phase, we are trying for apheresis after the viability of component separation unit. So all the viewers, doctors, user doctors, that after 2 days on the auspicious occasion of Akshaya Tritiya, we will inaugurating the component separation unit, and that will be handed over to the society. So this is my kind and humble request. Please attend the online session. Sir, we are really thankful for you. On behalf of Jana Kalyan Center, I am very thankful to you. So I think, please give me the permission to conclude the session.
One important announcement for audience. Hello. One important announcement for audience. This lecture
Yes,
series we are going to continue. So next lecture will be done by Dr. Harshila Kulkarni on hematological interpretation. Date will inform you in short time.
Yes. Thanks to all again. So we are concluding the session. Thanks, Dr. Atul sir again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Atul sir. Thank you.
Thank you.